Hello and welcome back to yet another video on the Alejandro Hernandez podcast. And today I'm going to be doing a New York Giants realistic offseason rebuild. I've been dying to make this video. I believe out of like the 15 videos I've done so far, this is the one I've been most excited for, most anticipating to make. If you can't already tell, I'm a New York Giants fan. I've been a fan since they made the playoffs in 2016. That was when I first started watching the team, started following the team. And it's been 8 to 9 years of misery since, but here I am trying to rebuild the roster the best way I know how, and I'm going to be doing this video with the approach as if I was the Giants general manager, and I'm going to be telling you guys what I would do in his situation and why I would do it. And we're going to be doing this in stages, so I'm going to have a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So our stage 1 is going to be the re-signing period, franchise tag, and our 5th-year options. And the first re-signing I'm going to make, my priority re-signing of the offseason for the Giants, is to bring back Darius Slayton. And I believe it's so important to bring a guy like him back because he's one of our longest tenure players. I believe his rookie year was 2019 along with Daniel Jones. He was a 6th round pick. He had an amazing rookie season. He's followed it up with pretty consistent years. He's been one of the better deep threats in the NFL across his career. And in that 2022 playoff run that we had, he was instrumental in our success throwing down the field, and I believe that whoever our next quarterback is, who I'll be revealing later on in this video, I believe that it's important to maintain him. He was our nominee for Walter Payton Man of the Year in 2024, so he's a high locker room, high character guy. He's one of our longest tenured players, and we've made mistakes in the past of letting our leaders in the locker room go. We let Saquon go. Obviously, that backfired horribly. We also let, I believe, who was the player that we let go? It was some other player. His name's not popping up in my head right now, but it was some other guy who was really instrumental in our locker room that we let him walk. And Xavier McKinney, we let him walk, and he went to Green Bay, almost led the league in interceptions. So we've made mistakes in not bringing guys back that we should have. I believe that if we let Darius Slayton go this offseason, it's going to be a massive mistake. And I'm kind of generating this offer in terms of other good wide receiver twos around the league, like how Gabe Davis got an offer last year. I believe it was 3 years, 40 million, somewhere around that range. And also, I forgot to mention that while I'm giving you guys these re-signings, these free agent offers, I'm going to be doing it through Madden. And it's a nice touch. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. You know, it's easy to make contracts on Madden, make it realistic, and that's how I'm going to be presenting it to you guys. So I offered Darius Slayton a 3-year, $39 million contract, $13 million per year. It might seem pricey for a guy like him who hasn't really had these very fancy numbers, but like I said before, high locker room guy, has been around for a long time. We have to retain him. I believe it'll be a mistake if we don't. He'll go to some other team. Some other team will pay him. Like how we didn't want to pay Saquon, some team will pay Slayton, and he'll be successful, and he'll show the league that he's one of the top deep threats in the NFL. And I believe that we must retain him, and that's why I'm giving him $13 million a year for 3 seasons. Keep him around, and he's our wide receiver too, heading into next season. So I'm offering him a 3-year, $39 million contract. Moving on, another player that we must keep is Amir Smith-Marset. He was our kick returner this year. He averaged 31 yards per return, and he also had a kick return touchdown in Week 17 against the Colts. I believe it's a good move to retain him, have him as our kick returner heading into next season. He was great on special teams this past year. And then another re-signing that we should make is Isaiah Simmons. I offered him a 2-year, $6.4 million contract. I believe it's fair given that he has weaknesses in the run game that are exploitable. That's why we usually use him as a nickel, as a slot, or as a safety, or as a sub linebacker. But in coverage, he may be weak in the run game, but in coverage, he's one of the top coverage backers or safeties in the NFL. He matches up great with tight ends, with slot receivers. He's athletic. He was a former number 8 overall pick in the draft, but he never really was able to develop into that caliber of player. But now on the Giants, he's kind of found a home, and I believe we should retain him on a cheap 2-year contract. And I also want to bring back Drew Lock on a 1-year, $4 million contract. He was reliable as a backup this season. He had some decent performances. He obviously had that one legacy game that took us out of contention for the number 1 overall pick against the Colts, where he put up 45 points. I think he's a reliable backup. He's fun to watch, so I think we should retain him. It's not really that smart letting him walk in free agency, go somewhere else. I think we should retain him. He knows the offense. We don't have to bring in another backup quarterback who has to learn the offense. He knows Brian Daboll's offense. He operated it pretty well when he came in for Daniel Jones and Tommy DeVito. I think we should retain him as our backup. Azeez Ojulari, I'm bringing him back on a 2-year, $9 million contract. Ever since we drafted him, he's been pretty reliable. He's actually been great. He's just struggled with a lot of injuries, and especially this season, he was having one of the best starts to his career that he's had in the NFL. I believe he had 6 sacks in his first 11 games. He was one of our best rotational pass rushers behind Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. However, he had a season-ending injury, but he's still very effective when he's into the game. He had one of the highest sack percentages per snap in the NFL in his 11 games that he played. However, he obviously had a season-ending injury, but I believe we should retain him. $4.5 million a year isn't that expensive for a rotational pass rusher, and I believe he's one of the best rotational pass rushers in the NFL, so we should 100% retain him. Another guy we're bringing back, Jason Pinnock. He's our free safety on a 2-year, $4.8 million contract. It's a pretty cheap deal. We want to keep him around. He had a great 2024 season, and he's been a guy that we've been developing, and I believe that now I'm going to reveal the free agent signings we're going to make. It's going to make more sense later, as now we'll have a young secondary. We have Banks, Cordell Flott, Jason Pinnock, Tyler Nubin, Drew Phillips. We have a lot of young guys, and I believe that we'll address veterans in free agency, which was what I'm going to move on to soon. But yeah, let's bring back Jason Pinnock, 2-year, $4.8 million deal, and he'll learn and develop under the free agent that I'm going to be bringing in, which I'll reveal later on in the video. Now, for people that we should cut or do not re-sign, I believe that it makes sense to cut Raheem Nunez-Roches. He's going to free up $3.6 million in cap space if we cut him, and it's only going to be a $1.43 million penalty. So we end up saving a lot of cap room for a mid-rotational pass rusher, interior lineman, and it just makes sense cap-wise. He frees up $3.6 million. It's kind of a no-brainer there. Let him walk, and we end up saving some money. And then we also are going to let walk Adoree Jackson, who's one of our veteran cornerbacks. I believe it's time to move on from him. He had a decent 2024 season. I believe we signed him to a long-term deal in 2022. We signed him to like a 3-year, $39 million deal. He served well for us. He was a decent cornerback 1/cornerback 2, but I think it's time to move on. He's an aging player, injury-prone player. And I believe we can find his replacement in free agency. So we're going to let Adoree Jackson walk this offseason. We're not going to be giving him an extension. And now we can move on to the franchise tag. Really, this offseason, we have no one pending that we need a franchise tag. We don't have a high-caliber player that's on an expiring contract that we need to franchise tag. So no franchise tag this offseason, and then we're going to move on to our 5th-year options. We have 2 players that are upcoming on their 5th-year options. One of them is Kayvon Thibodeau, and we're going to accept this option. It's $16.5 million heading into this offseason. The Giants, I believe in real life and in my video here, we will retain him, and we should. He's had a very productive couple of seasons. His rookie year, he was making such great impact plays. That 2022 season still feels like a fever dream. His first really big appearance on the scene was against the Ravens at home when he had that strip sack on Lamar. Then later on against the Commanders, he had a strip sack, recovery, and touchdown against the Commanders on Sunday Night Football. I remember that game like it was yesterday. He was a great impact player. It's who we drafted him to be, a difference maker, a playmaker, and our top pass rusher on defense. And now, obviously, we have Brian Burns alongside him. So 100% I believe we should retain Kayvon Thibodeau, accept that 5th-year option heading into next season, getting ready to give him a big contract extension. Now we move on to Evan Neal, who's been an absolute bust since we've drafted him in 2022. It's so rough because at the time he seemed like a no-brainer pick. He was one of the top tackles coming out of the draft, and it just hasn't panned out. He's been absolutely awful at the right tackle position. However, I have a proposal. Obviously, me, I'm acting as the GM. I'm acting as, as I'm in order of operations for the Giants right now. I think we should try him at right guard in 2025. We've seen it so many times with guards, with failed tackles who have turned into guards. Most recently, Mekhi Becton. He was drafted as a first-round pick in 2022 by the Jets. He completely failed. He struggled with injuries. The Jets gave up on him after 2 years. They cut him. And then the Eagles picked him up, turned him into a right guard. And all of a sudden, he's one of the best right guards in football. So he had a massive turnaround in his career. And it's really those big, oversized tackles who struggle in pass protection that end up shifting to guard, and they end up panning out and having a great career after that, after they make that switch. So I believe it's worth giving Evan Neal a shot, especially if we're going to decline his 5th-year option. Heading into the final year of his deal, of his rookie contract, might as well just give it a shot. Obviously, it's not working at right tackle. Let's make a change. Let's try and move him to guard, start him at guard. If he struggles, then obviously we know he's just a complete bust. But if not, he could have a great turnaround. Another player, obviously, actually a Giants player that made the transition from tackle to guard, Eric Flowers. And for Giants fans, you'll obviously know who I'm talking about. We drafted him, I believe, it was either 2015 or 2016. I think it was the 2015 draft. We drafted Eric Flowers. Complete bust at tackle. The whole New York media shitted on him. He was just not good. Complete bust. We let him walk. We didn't bring him back after his rookie deal expired. He ends up transitioning to guard, and then later on in his career gets a 3-year, $30 million contract to the Miami Dolphins. So he ended up turning his career around after he started out as a tackle, failed miserably in the NFL, couldn't hold up in pass protection, changed to a guard, and he was a great guard in the NFL. So it's Mekhi Becton and Eric Flowers have both made the transition from tackle to guard, and it's panned out for them. So I believe we should try and experiment with that with Evan Neal. He's a big guy. He's 6'7", 350. He should be able to have some success. He's a powerful run blocker, and I believe that we should give it a shot. Just give him a shot at guard, see if it pans out, and if not, then we move off him next year and don't extend him. And now let's move on to stage 2, free agency. And I believe this free agent pickup at quarterback is a no-brainer. I like it, and it also means that with this signing, we will not be drafting a quarterback with the 3rd overall pick. And I'm signing Justin Fields to a 2-year, $38 million contract. And I believe it makes sense. He is going to be our bridge quarterback, and we're going to build the roster around the quarterback this offseason so that in 2026 we can draft a quarterback in 2026. I believe that Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, they're good prospects, but in other drafts, there's obviously been way better quarterback talent. It's not that I don't believe in them. I don't believe in the Giants' ability to build around them and for them to have success around a mid-offensive line. I just think they're going to get killed their rookie year if we do select either Cam Ward or Shedeur. I don't think it's going to work. I think they're both going to be busts. Mind you, if they go to a different team, maybe they'll end up panning out and being successful, but I don't think the Giants are in the position right now to draft a rookie quarterback and for them to have a season like CJ Stroud or Jaden Daniels. I just don't think it's feasible. I don't think it's possible, which is why I'm taking the alternative route and bringing in Justin Fields. He's a young player. He's still, I believe, 25, 26, around that age. We signed him to a $19 million per year deal. 2 years, $38 million. It's team friendly. We can. I signed him to a contract in Madden, where you're able to, in year 2, you can restructure it, and then there won't be a big dead cap hit if we want to let him go after this offseason comes around. So it's a team friendly deal. It's only $19 million. We're not getting Stafford or Aaron Rodgers and having to pay them $30, $40 million a year. I believe that whole Matt Stafford, obviously it's dead now because he ended up restructuring his contract with the Rams and staying in LA. I believe that whole buzz with Matt Stafford and the Giants, it just made no sense for either side. Stafford, he's not coming to a winning situation. We have a brutal schedule in 2025. It just didn't make sense for either side, and that's why I don't think the Aaron Rodgers buzz doesn't make any sense either for both sides. They should be going to winning teams, to winning organizations who are ready to win now. And the Giants are just not in that position right now, which is why I think Justin Fields makes sense. He's still young. He's not really one of these winning quarterbacks like Stafford or Rodgers who are in win now mode. He's kind of that bridge guy who has the upside of a Sam Darnold who went to the Vikings, went 14-3. He has that kind of upside as a player. He's a very exciting player. He's going to sell some tickets. He's going to make some highlight reel plays. He's young, just like the offense around him. We have Malik Neighbors, we have Tyrone Tracy, Wan'Dale Robinson, Theo Johnson, Slayton. He's one of our older guys, but Jalen Hyatt. We have a young roster, and I believe that we're not ready to go all in yet, which is why I think we should hold off a year on drafting a quarterback or bringing in a big-name quarterback. We signed Fields to a 2-year, $38 million extension. We bring him in as the bridge QB. He obviously has some experience in the NFL. He has like 3 or 4 years playing experience in the NFL. He's an experienced guy. He can pick up on the offense. We can build the offense around him. Him and Tracy in the backfield. You have Malik Neighbors. He's actually succeeded with wide receiver ones in his career. DJ Moore had a 1,300-yard season with Justin Fields as a starter. He did pretty well with Pittsburgh. He went 4-2 in his first six starts in Pittsburgh. He had a great start. And I believe that he'll have some success in New York, but there won't be the lofty expectations of we need to win now. We need to turn this thing around. And that's the way I'm handling this. I don't think the Giants are going to handle it this way. I think that Joe Shane and Brian Dable are under pressure from John Mara, the owner, to win now. And they're going to take a big swing. Obviously, they're not going after Stafford now, but they might sign Aaron Rodgers. They might draft Shedeur or Cam Ward, and I think it's going to be a mistake. and it's going to be a mistake because we're not ready to go all in. I believe we should take this offseason to build the team around him and wait till 2026 to then draft the successor and the franchise QB. In a way better class, there's going to be Arch Manning in next year's class, Dylan Gabriel. There's going to be some really great prospects that I believe are better than this year's prospects. And that's why I'm bringing Justin Fields in on a 2-year deal. Moving on, I'm going to bring in Paulson Adebo, who's going to enter free agency. He's a former Saints cornerback. I'm going to bring him in to be our cornerback 1, and I'm going to sign him to a 3-year, $27 million extension. So $9 million per year. I believe it's a pretty fair offer, and we'll bring him in as a cornerback 1. The depth chart will look like him at cornerback 1, Cordell Flott, cornerback 2, Drew Phillips to play in the slot, and then Deonte Banks will be relegated to our cornerback 4, who's been kind of a bust since we drafted him. The Giants just simply can't draft cornerbacks. We failed on Eli Apple, DeAndre Baker, and now Deonte Banks also looks like a bust. So we're going to bring in a veteran presence, Paulson Adebo, signed to a big contract. We need cornerback help. Secondary is one of our biggest weaknesses, and I believe we addressed this in free agency by bringing in a veteran guy, and we need corners because obviously look at our division. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith on Philly, C.D. Lamb on the Cowboys, Terry McLaurin, and then I just got news now, breaking news, Deebo Samuel to the Commanders. So now there's so many wide receivers in our division. We need corner help badly, and that's why I'm making the signing of Paulson Adebo to be our number 1 corner. And then my third signing in free agency is going to be Quandre Diggs, who's had a long career. He's a free safety who's played in Seattle and Tennessee. He's had a very lengthy career. I believe he also played in Detroit at the beginning of his career. He's a very experienced, good safety. We bring him in to nurture and mentor Tyler Nubin and Jason Pinnock and Isaiah Simmons. So we bring in a veteran presence on a cheap 1-year, $4.5 million contract. Just bring him in, have a veteran presence in a very young secondary. So now we bring in 2 guys, Paulson Adebo and Quandre Diggs, to kind of balance out the secondary and give us some help there in one of our biggest weaknesses on the team. And like I said, he's going to mentor Jason Pinnock, Tyler Nubin, and Isaiah Simmons in our secondary. And then obviously it's a cheap 1-year deal. We move off him next season. We don't bring him back. Now, moving on to stage 3, the NFL draft. I'm only going to be doing the first 2 rounds because I'm not that knowledgeable about the players after round 2. So I'm only going to do a 2-round mock draft for the Giants. And what I'm going to do with the 3rd pick is going to surprise a lot of people, but I believe it makes a lot of sense, at least coming from my position. This league is a copycat league. We saw what the Philadelphia Eagles just did. They completely murdered Mahomes in the Super Bowl with just a 4-man rush. They didn't blitz on a single down. And I want to build a dominant defensive line on the Giants, and they already have that, but they're just missing one simple piece. So what I'm going to do is, with the 3rd pick, I'm going to trade with the Raiders, and I'm going to be releasing my mock draft, like official mock draft of the first round soon, but I'm kind of going to reveal and tease what I'm going to be doing in that mock draft. I believe Cam Ward goes number 1 to Tennessee, Abdul Carter goes to Cleveland, and with the 3rd pick, the Giants trade down with the Raiders. The Raiders make an aggressive trade up. I don't think they get a quarterback in free agency. I believe they trade up with New York to get Shedeur Sanders. I believe Shedeur to the Raiders makes so much sense in so many ways. He's obviously posted about them on social media. I believe he fits that type of culture in the Raiders. They have a losing culture historically. He wants to go turn that around. I believe the Raiders and Shedeur is a perfect fit, and I believe the Raiders, they feel as though their chances of getting Shedeur are slipping away because Cam Ward has already gone number 1. So they're going to make an aggressive trade up with New York to get the number 3 overall pick. And what they're going to do to get it is give up next year's first-round pick. So the Giants are giving away their 3rd pick to the Raiders, and the Raiders are giving the Giants the 6th overall pick and their first-round pick in 2026. So this makes so much sense for both sides, really. The Raiders are getting their franchise guy, who they believe will be their franchise guy, and the Giants are preparing to draft a quarterback in 2026. With this trade, the Giants will now have 2 first-round picks in 2026, and they'll use those 2 picks to trade up for maybe an Arch Manning in the 2026 NFL draft and get their guy next year. But I believe this trade down makes a lot of sense for both sides. And with the 6th overall pick, I have the New York Giants selecting Mason Graham, defensive tackle from Michigan. And that will complete our defensive line unit. We'll now have in the interior Dexter Lawrence, Elijah Chapman, and now Mason Graham. which makes it one of the best interior defensive lines in the NFL. On top of that, we have Brian Burns, we have Kayvon Thibodeau, and Azeez Ojulari off the edge. Instantly, with this pick, the Giants now have a complete defensive line and a top 3 pass rush in the NFL. And two of the things we struggled with was interior pass rush. And Dexter Lawrence had a season-ending injury, but up until that point, he was leading the NFL in sacks. He had 8 or 9 sacks. In the first 7 games of the season, he was dominant, but then he had that season-ending injury. Now with this pick, they can't double or triple team Dexter Lawrence because now they have to worry about Mason Graham. It kind of benefits both players because in college, Mason Graham struggled against double teams. Now he's not going to have to deal with double teams because he has Dexter Lawrence alongside him who demands so much attention from an offensive line. They're going to give offensive lines absolute nightmares. Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Mason Graham, Dexter Lawrence. Those 4 players are just insane. And we become instantly a top 2, top 3 defensive line in the NFL. And the Eagles have the blueprint. Get a great defensive line, get a great offensive line, and you're going to win a lot of games. And I believe the Giants, that's the approach I want to take in building this roster up once again. And I believe it starts with taking such a talented defensive player in Mason Graham, who's great against the run, great against rushing the passer. He's just an absolute insane prospect, and he's the best interior rusher in this draft without a doubt, and he's worthy of a top 6 selection in the NFL draft. And it's going to come as a surprise as to why I'm trading down. Obviously, Travis Hunter would make a lot of sense with the Giants to make this pick, but I brought in Paulson Adebo in free agency. We don't really have a need at cornerback. And we already have Malik Neighbors, obviously, as a star wide receiver. So how is that going to pan out with Malik and Travis Hunter on the same offense? You see the situation that the Bengals are in now when they can't really bring back Jamar or T. Higgins. They can only pay one. And I think that the Giants are going to find themselves in that situation if they take Travis Hunter 2-3 years down the road. They're going to have to pay both of them. And it's not really a blueprint to win Super Bowls paying both a wide receiver and a cornerback / wide receiver, whatever Travis is going to play in the NFL, $25+ million a year, because that's what they're going to command. And obviously Travis is a great talent. I wouldn't be mad if in real life the Giants took Travis Hunter at number 3 overall. I think it's a great pick. But like I said, the blueprint to win in this league is build a great defensive line, build a great offensive line, and that's what I'm doing with this selection. I am beefing up the defensive line and making us instantly a top 3 unit in the NFL. So now we just strengthen a strength with Mason Graham. And on top of that, we get a first-round pick in 2026. So now we have 2. So that's why I believe this makes sense. And it's a different approach. I haven't seen a single mock draft where we're taking Mason Graham in the first round, but this is the proposal I'm coming with, and I believe it makes a lot of sense, like I just explained. And now with pick 34, I'm going to be selecting a guard out of Arizona. His name is Jonah Savainea, and I believe that this pick makes so much sense for a multitude of reasons. The Giants obviously have major struggles on their right side of their offensive line. We have Andrew Thomas and John Runyon at left tackle and left guard. We have a developing John Michael Schmitz at center, but the right side of the offensive line is just a complete disaster right now with Evan Neal and Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. With this pick, Jonah has experience of both playing right guard and right tackle in college, and he's a high versatile player who has great size for the position. I believe that this is such great value at this pick, at pick 34. He's one of the top tackle / guards in this draft, which is very rich in offensive linemen. And we have a multitude of options in terms of what we do after this selection. We can either start Illuminor at right tackle or Evan Neal at right tackle, give Evan Neal one more shot, and then play Savainea at guard, or we could start Savainea at right tackle, and then we can slot Evan Neal into right guard. So there's a lot of options that we have with this pick since he's so versatile, which is why I like the value, and I like the player since he can play both right guard and right tackle. He has versatility, and I believe that we'll use that to our advantage with this pick. He can either sit behind Illuminor and learn as a right tackle, and we start Evan Neal at right guard and Illuminor at right tackle. He's a high upside player, versatile player who has great size for the position, and it addresses a huge need in our offensive lines, which is why I love this pick at pick 34. I'm praying that he falls to us and that we take him with pick 34. And it addresses a huge need in our offensive line, especially on the right side, which is why I love this pick. And overall, for the rest of the draft, I'm not going to be doing it since I'm not that knowledgeable of the players. I'm really only knowledgeable of the first 64 players that are going to be off the board. But like I said, there's a blueprint in this league, addressing the offensive line, addressing the defensive line, beefing those two sides of the ball up, win the trenches battles, and you're going to win a lot of games. And I believe that with these first 2 picks, that's the tone I'm kind of setting. Defensive lineman in the first round, offensive lineman in the second round. It's a copycat league. We're copying the Eagles. Let's go with their approach. Let's build a dominant offensive line and a dominant defensive line. And Mason Graham and Jonas Savaiinaea are a means to building towards that. And as for positions of need that we should address later on in the draft, I believe in the 3rd round we should go for a cornerback, kind of to get more depth at that position that we're lacking right now. Try and find a gem like how we did with Drew Phillips. We drafted him in the 3rd or 4th round last year. He ended up being a great player, so try and take a chance on a guy in the 3rd round at corner. In the 4th round, we're going to have to address middle linebacker. We have Bobby Okereke. He has only 2 years left in his contract. And then we have Micah McFadden, who has only 1 year left in his contract. So I believe that's a position that we're going to have to address. Let's do it early in the 4th round. Let's not wait till next year to try and fix our middle linebacker situation. Let's be ahead of that problem. Take a guy in the 4th round that plays middle linebacker. In the 5th round, I think we should take a receiver, probably a deep threat or a slot guy. We have Malik, we have Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, but I still think we should just try and get some depth at that position in case of injuries. Take a chance on the guy in the 5th round, and then we have 2 7th round picks. I believe we should once again address interior defensive line, just get a guy to add some depth to that position, and then get a running back in the 7th round. And for the draft, that is it. And overall, we've now completed the 3 stages of the offseason, and that is it for this video. And I will see you guys next time when I'll be releasing my mock draft episode. And until then, I'll see you guys next time.